If we have a syntactic form like delay that we want to treat as sugar and convert it to this lambda expression, then we can build that into parse, or we can also just separate this out into a separate function, expand delay. So here expand delay takes an S expression that it expects to match this pattern, and it generates this S expression. And our little test here to make sure delay expands to that lambda does work out. If we change this to an untyped language like Racket, then it will look pretty similar. We just don't have to do this coercion right here. We don't declare the type on S, and also there's no test form, so we need to require that from Plait. So this test will again pass now in plain Racket, just without the extra coercions. By boiling that down to plain Racket, we've made it a little simpler, but we're still relying on backquote unquote, which is kind of a fancy construct. We don't have to rely on backquotes though, because this S expression just corresponds to lists and symbols. So we could write expand delay instead like this. You pull the second part of S out and put it into a list with the symbol lambda and the S expression dummy in curly braces. We could even get rid of list here and boil it down to the more primitive form, cons. Cons the lambda symbol onto cons of the dummy S expression onto cons of second, and so on, where the empty list here is written as quote curly braces, although we usually write it with parentheses. We could break this down further. We still got a backquote here. We could turn that into list dummy. Or, since we need quote anyway, we can just agree that we'll have a quote form as primitive that allows any kind of S expression there. There's one more thing we can simplify here. We're using the second function, but of course second is just a combination of first and rest. So this boils down expand delay, the body of that function, into some small primitives that we might want to implement in curly. We need to go a little bit further because curly doesn't have define, but where we have define and then a call to expand delay, we can always change that to not use the function shorthand. So this is the same, define using lambda and S, and then go another step further and use let instead of define. So if we let expand delay, then we can call expand delay, and we're boiling this down to something that looks pretty close to curly now. We just need quote marks, cons, first, and rest, and the empty list. Well, that's covered by quote marks. We're going to adjust the convention from now on to not write the word expand before it, but just call this the delay function and call the delay function on S expressions.